Assalamu alaikum, listeners. You're listening to Ramadan Radio in Leicester on 87.7 FM and broadcasting on the internet on ramadan.fm. Alhamdulillah, it's another Friday, the second Friday of Jummah, this particular Ramadan. Alhamdulillah, inshallah, this radio is coming to you while you are fit and healthy and in good health, inshallah. And may Allah allow us to carry on doing good deeds in this month and take full advantage of it. So my name is Ibrahim, and inshallah I'll be interviewing Sister Sofia Bhatti from the Muslim Bereavement Support Services. And we will be talking about the services that they provide and how the Muslim community can benefit. And specifically, it's actually a service geared towards ladies, but inshallah, Sister Sofia will elaborate more. So, Assalamu alaikum, Sister Sofia.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah khair for having me on your show today.
Barakallah fiki. Okay, so Sister Sofia, tell us more about what is the Muslim Burial Support Services?
Sure. So the Muslim Bereavement Support Service is a registered charity that was set up in 2012. It became obvious that sisters were burying their children at the Gardens of Peace Cemetery, which we are part of. And the brothers there that were working in the grounds of the cemetery really noticed that these sisters were grieving. So they said, look, we need to do something for our sisters. They're grieving, they're heartbroken, they've just buried their child. How can we support them? So then we started MBSS. And then as time went on, we thought, well, why not extend our skills, our supports for sisters that have lost anybody, not just a child? So what we do is we provide emotional support to sisters. They may have lost a child, may have lost a sibling, may have lost a close relative, a friend, and so we provide emotional support. We support the community by providing telephone-based or face-to-face befriending service where you can come and talk to one of our trained befrienders about your loss, how you're feeling, how you're coping, and we help you to untangle your emotions. We give you some coping strategies. We talk to you about Islam and how that can help you, inshallah, in your time of grief. And, we do group sessions as well, where sisters can come and meet other sisters that are bereaved. We do online sessions as well, where sisters, again, can support each other, when they're grieving, and we facilitate those. So in essence, that's what we do. We provide emotional support to sisters that have gone through a loss of a loved one.
Okay, so emotional service, the Muslim Bereavement Support Services. Okay, and whereabouts are you based? So you mentioned a cemetery there. It sounded like that it is based in London. So are you based in London as well?
Yes, we are based in London. We do have an office in Glasgow. We're part of Gardens of Peace Cemetery in London. We have a dedicated counselling room there and training facilities there, which we use to train healthcare professionals like doctors, palliative care nurses, etc. But although our office is based in London, location is not a barrier. 98%, I would say, of the support that we provide is on the telephone anyway. Even sisters that are local to us prefer to have their support on the telephone. It's just convenient for them. They don't have to go anywhere. So if you've got listeners listening in from Leicester, they can receive support from us as well. So location is not a barrier at all. In fact, we've actually supported sisters abroad as well, because what we do is quite unique in the sense that we support sisters from an Islamic point of view of how to deal with their grief. And there's not many organisations out there that do that. You've got the standard NHS counselling, bereavement support. You've got other organisations out there like talking therapies that can help you, but they don't bring in Islam, and that is the greatest source of comfort for us as Muslims when we go through grief.
Okay, so that's interesting. So the thing that kind of marks out your services compared to the ones that are available commercially out there is that you bring in an aspect of Islam.
Absolutely, that makes us quite different. The other things that make us different is that we not only do we bring in Islam, but we also bring in the non-Islamic angle as well. So some sisters, they are not as practicing, shall we say, and so they need more practical targets instead. So there was a sister, for example, she loved reading, but she was grieving after having lost her twins. So we couldn't talk about Islam too much with her about with her grief. But she loved reading, so we said, okay, look, why don't you go to the library once a week, go and get some books, read them, and then go back, because she wasn't getting out of the house. She was literally just isolating herself. So that was just a way of motivating her to get up, go out, and rather than isolate herself. We're also quite different, because other organisations have a limited number of sessions that they will offer. Most sisters that come to us will be offered 4 sessions initially, and if they need a further 2 sessions, we will give them another 2 sessions. But again, if they need more than that, we're not just going to leave them. Having had just 6 sessions, we'll carry on supporting them if they need more than that. So that's why we're quite different as well, because NHS, for example, will only offer you 6 sessions. Also, our sisters that are receiving support will speak to the same befriender every time through their grief journey. So it's not like a helpline where you pick up the phone and you talk about your grief. You have an allocated befriender that's there to talk to you in confidence about your feelings, and it's the same sister that you speak to every time. So you build up quite a good, strong relationship with them, and you get to understand. Our volunteers get to understand our sisters that we're supporting, what helps them most, what we shouldn't talk about, because sometimes they don't want to hear certain things. So we build up a very good, strong relationship with them, alhamdulillah.
Okay. Yep, sounds good. Okay, and yeah, I think at that one-to-one kind of service you provide, and the concept of a befriender, so you have a dedicated person, I think does allow for that continuity from one call to the next, and so they're not repeating the same things. And yeah, it can be a very emotional thing to have to repeat the same trauma, let's say, over repeated calls. So that sounds a very good thing. And listeners out there, if you have any questions, then please do text them in to 077 488 55055. That's 077 488 55055. We should be here until about 11 a.m. this morning. Okay, so, and we're talking about Muslim bereavement support services. So if you've perhaps had a death in the family, and you've got some questions about how to deal with the grief, the emotional side, then please do text us or contact us via one of the other means. You can also call. Actually, I would prefer if you text on 077 488 55055 for the moment anyway, and perhaps we might open up the telephone lines later on. So, Sister Sofia, what makes, so you've covered what makes the Muslim burial support services different from the other bereavement services in the sense that you bring in Islam. Are there any other differentiating factors? And you also mentioned that you do more than 6 sessions, like the NHS, they only do 6 sessions, but you will continue doing, and you have a dedicated person. Are there any other distinguishing factors?
Yeah. So, for example, we support children as well. So we have a dedicated team that knows how best to support children when they are grieving. So sometimes, you've got children that have lost a sibling or they've lost a parent, and the way we support them would be different from how we would support an adult. So we have a dedicated team that has been trained specifically on how to help children. Another factor that makes us quite distinguished is the fact that we offer support using other alternative therapies. So, for example, we use art as a form of therapy. So we run sessions about twice a year, art therapy sessions, where sisters that are bereaved can come and express their emotion through art. Cricket therapy as well. So we've used that for children, where bereaved children can come and play cricket and meet other bereaved children as well. And then they start opening up and talking about their grief and start, it's a softer approach of, getting them to open up and talk about their emotions. We also have walking therapy as well. Again, sisters come, we go for a lovely walk. It's a softer approach where sisters can open up and talk about their grief with other sisters. And our trained befrienders are, on the walk as well with them. And because not everybody wants to sit down in front of somebody else, or not everybody wants to pick up the phone and talk to a befriender. So they may benefit more from one of these softer approaches. So that makes us quite different as well, compared to other organisations. Also, we start supporting very quickly. We realise that our sisters are crying out for the help, so we don't want to keep them waiting too long. So quite often we're able to support about, the waiting list is about 4 weeks at the moment, 4 or 5 weeks, which is very short compared to, again, NHS, for example, or other organisations, because as I mentioned, it's a free service. It's a free service, it's a confidential service. So you're not having to wait very long at all. Sometimes when you have a service that's free, for example, it's a very, very long list. But alhamdulillah, we've got about 30 trained befrienders. And so we want to provide the support as quickly as possible. So you're not waiting very long at all. That makes us quite different. And the fact that we're not a 9 to 5 organisation. Some of our sisters are working, so they want support in the evenings, they want support on the weekends. So we will provide support 365 days of the year, weekends and evenings included.
Okay, wow. Okay, so it's like I mean, that's quite interesting. One thing that I found that I didn't realize that the waiting lists are so long to get support. To me, 4 weeks, although you're saying that you're quite a quick service, that sounds still like quite a long time between the death and a person receiving support. Because I mean, from my own personal experience, I remember that I think the grief hit me quite quickly. I think it was within the first week of the loss. So to me, I mean, the 4 weeks still sounds quite long, but I suppose it's better than, as you mentioned, it's better than the other services which have a longer wait time.
Can I just mention that, that's something that's quite new to us, because before our service was within 3 days of you contacting us, your befriender would be in touch with you within 3 days. So there was only a 3-day wait. But unfortunately, because of COVID and the amount of deaths and the amount of grief that's out there, our our waiting time now is approximately 4 weeks.
Okay.
Because of COVID, we blame it on COVID. But hopefully, once sisters learn to tackle their grief, then that list will go down to what it used to be for many, many years, to about 3 days, which is minimal. The other thing to mention is that it's, some theories out there say that you should wait approximately 6 months before you have any sort of support anyway, because you've got to understand and you've got to untangle your grief and you've got to get over that shock anyway before you'll be able to benefit from any support. So there is that view out there that you shouldn't be receiving any support, but we don't go by that. Obviously, we say no, we want to provide the support as quickly as possible.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so I suppose what I was feeling was shock rather than grief.
Yes, shock. And because no matter, even if you've got somebody who is terminally ill for maybe 1 or 2 years, you're still going to experience that shock of them passing, even though it was an expected death. You'll still go through the shock stage of that grief.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Yep. So, listeners, if you've been affected or you've got some questions for Sister Sofia of the Muslim Bereavement Support Services, please do text your questions into 077 488 55055. That's 077 488 55055. Okay. Is there any particular community that uses your services more?
I would say the Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Indian community tend to use the service more. I think the other thing that they can benefit from is the fact that we can speak, our befrienders speak a multitude of languages. So we have befrienders that can speak Urdu, Punjabi, Gujarati, Pashto. We want to provide support that's tailor-made, custom-made for our sisters that we're supporting. And because grief is so complicated, we want our sisters to be able to speak to us in a language that's most comfortable for them. So that's why we have specifically gone out and looked for volunteers that speak languages like Bangla and Urdu, Punjabi, Pashto, etc. We have Arabic speaker as well, and a French speaker as well. So I would say, but the majority of the calls that we get are from English-speaking sisters or Gujarati, Punjabi, Urdu-speaking sisters and Bengali speaking sisters. They're the ones that make up the most.
Okay, mashallah. So how many sisters volunteer for your service?
We have about 30 at the moment. Approximate 30 volunteers. Yes.
Okay, and
Uh,
given that you've got longer wait times now, are you looking for more volunteers to try
at
and
the
address
moment,
that?
yeah, at the moment not. We're hoping that we'll be able to, um, deal with the amount of demand there is out there with the current sisters that we've got. But if anybody is interested in volunteering, when we do our next uptake of new volunteers, because we give them a lot of training. We would first interview them, make sure they're suitable, make sure that emotionally they're stable themselves,
Mm.
because it's quite challenging ourselves emotionally when you're supporting one sister after another, and sometimes we're supporting two different sisters at the same time. So we have to be emotionally quite strong ourselves. So anybody that's interested, please do still get in touch with us, because when we next take on our new volunteers, we'll inshallah interview you and then give you lots of training, Islamic training and general bereavement training as well. And then we'll, obviously allow you to then talk to sisters that are going through the most traumatic times in their lives, and you'll be coming across sisters that have got a range of emotions. Some of them have got feelings of guilt, denial, shock, anger. Some are just, in a state of shock for some time, and some have feelings of guilt quite often, in the sense that, I should have done more, I should have spent more time with my family, I should have spent more time with my mother. All of these range of emotions come into play sometimes. So you've got to be able to deal with those emotions and be able to untangle those emotions with the sisters that you're supporting.
Okay, mashallah. And if a sister's out there listening and she would like to volunteer, how can they go about applying?
They would just email us. Yeah, I'm sure you can share the email address and or contact number at the end. Please just get in touch. We have social media handles as well, the normal ones, and then just please get in touch, and we'll put you onto. We'll keep your details, and when we next take on some volunteers, we'll be in touch, inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay, and the website is mbss.org.uk, and you can find contact details on there just in case somebody needs to rush off and they can't wait until the end of the program. But yeah, more details will be on the website on how to volunteer and also how to gain service or apply to be someone who benefits from the service provided. Okay, and you mentioned that you provide support in many languages and including, so it's not just English that you do, but that is the main language that support is provided in.
Yes, I would say so. Majority speak English, but we do, as I mentioned, we've got different volunteers that speak various different languages, and we always try our level best to match up what the sister that needs the support requires. So she wants support in Bengali, sorry, and we'll find a volunteer that speak that particular language. We've got sisters sometimes requesting that they want to speak to somebody who's also lost a husband. She's lost a husband, and she feels that she would benefit most from a volunteer that's lost a husband too. So we'll match up a volunteer, because they feel that they can open up, they can empathize more, and so on. So we've had sisters that have lost a child, and they say, look, do you have a volunteer that can speak my language and has also lost a child, because I think she can relate to my pain more.
Mm-hmm.
So our aim is always to customize the support in a way that's going to benefit the sister the most.
Wow. Okay. So not only do you match the language, you also match the particular need of the
Yeah.
sister. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you support only Muslims?
Even though the name suggests Muslim bereavement support service, we have supported sisters that are not Muslim. Our skills are transferable, so we can provide non-faith based bereavement support to. So, for example, when the Grenfell tragedy happened in London, our volunteers were on the ground supporting people of the Muslim faith, no faith. We're all one at the end of the day, so we're not going to turn anybody away because they're not Muslim. We have sisters approaching us that are married to Muslims. And the husband, for example, there's a sister who's Christian herself. She was married to a Muslim. He sadly passed away, and she wanted to understand the etiquettes of why he was buried so quickly, and wanted to understand, about our rituals and our religion, and because she was married to him, and he was Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
we had a Sikh sister as well, Sikh lady who approached us. She tried receiving support from the conventional organisations, but she spoke Punjabi. So she came to us. Her daughter, in fact, got in touch with us, and she asked if we could support her mother in Punjabi, and we did. So us, and also there's every year there's a national campaign called the Baby Loss Awareness Week, and we take part in that. And we have various stands in various hospitals, and people of no faith or the non-Muslim faith approach us when we've got the stand, and they talk about their emotions. I remember a gentleman approached us at the stand, and he was talking about how they'd had a miscarriage 18 years previously, and that pain was still there. And he wasn't Muslim. We didn't turn him away. We just said, yes, of course, talk to us. How are you feeling? And we helped him that day as well. So yeah, people of non-Muslim faith as well, we do support.
Okay, well, all right. And you mentioned it was a gentleman that approached your stall there, but my understanding is that your service is geared specifically towards ladies. Is that right?
That's right, because we all our volunteers are female, and you're allocated a befriender, as I mentioned before. So you build up quite a strong relationship with your befriender. You're speaking to your befriender maybe up to 6 times. You might take all 6 sessions, and you're speaking about your for maybe 40-45 minutes to them. So it's not appropriate being an Islamic bereavement service for our female volunteers to be supporting brothers. But we do hope and we do acknowledge that brothers need the support, because quite often they're crumbling inside as well, but they're trying to be the strong ones that of the household. They're trying to keep everybody together, but inside they need that support as well. So we totally do acknowledge they need some support, but at the moment NBSS does not cater for that. But we do hope that at some point we will be able to take on male volunteers and get them to support our brothers that need that support.
Okay, so it seems it's a lack of male volunteers, and would you say, I mean, there's a lack of male demand out there as well for this kind of service, or do you think
Um,
it's about the same?
I think the demand is less, but there is demand out there, because we do get asked, is there any support for the brothers? Especially in a sort of a situation where they've lost a child. So
Mhm.
mum and dad are both grieving, but the mum's got support, but the father hasn't. And so I think the demand is out there. It's not as great as the sisters, but there is a need there
Okay, yeah.
for.
So if there's any brothers that possibly, I suppose you need the volunteers first, right? So,
Yes.
I
Um,
mean, are you recruiting male volunteers at the moment, or?
Not at the moment, because we're still trying to deal with the huge intake of sisters that need support. And at some point, we will be looking for male volunteers, but not at the moment, because it takes a lot of training. We need to provide a lot of training before we let anybody speak to bereaved individuals out there.
Mhm. Okay.
Um, yeah.
So, I mean, one kind of question that arises to me, like, why why is there a need for a service like this? Can't females and ladies talk to their sisters and their mothers and their other female people within their families?
Grief is very complicated, and it's the most traumatic time of anybody's life, I would say. It's a huge test. And, you might be dealing with a suicide case. You might be dealing with a sister, a single mom, for example, brought up her child by herself, gone through all the struggles, and then her son's passed away in a car accident.
Mhm.
Okay. So not everybody in your family, people in your family are quite often not equipped to be able to guide and talk and help you navigate your emotions. It takes a lot of training to be able to do that. And also this confidential factor as well. You might not want to open up to a sister who's lost her baby might not want to open up to her husband because he's grieving too. Siblings might not want to open up to each other having lost their mother because they are grieving too. Or there might be family politics. They might not get on. They might have said the wrong thing. They might say the wrong they might use the wrong tone, they might use the wrong wording, and so on. So that's the reason why sisters do come to somebody outside. They just feel that they can open up better, maybe, and they're not going to be judged. It's non-judgmental. It's in confidence as well. Whereas if you go to family members, that's not always the case. And also, that's their escape, talking to us. Yeah, talking to somebody outside. So yeah, so I think that's the reason why they come to us.
Okay, and I understand that your service has Islamic elements in it. And amongst your volunteers, are there trained scholars, or how do they get the Islamic knowledge?
We have we received Islamic training from our scholars, and it's not just a one-off training. We do receive training as we go throughout, because you know, sisters do ask us some very specific questions. Some are general questions like, am I allowed to go to the graveyard? Am I allowed to cry? In a suicide case, am I allowed to pray for the person that committed suicide? So we do have some general questions as well, but sometimes we get asked very specific questions as well. So we do go back to our scholars and ask them those questions, and then come back to our sister that's asked those very specific questions as well. So yes, so our Islamic training comes from scholars, and it's not just one-off training; it's continuous training.
Okay, so it sounds like if a sister is helping or has befriended someone who's grieving, if she does not know the answer of an Islamic question that the grieving lady has asked, then she will ask first and then come back with an answer.
Absolutely, we don't want to give them the wrong advice, so we're going to be accountable for that. So if we don't know the answer ourselves, we will check with our scholar, and then go back to the sisters. I mean, so for example, there's a sister who had a medical termination, and she was really upset about that. It was playing on her mind, and but so we knew the answer to that. We knew that medically, she because she had to have the termination, she wasn't sinful. So these are the sorts of questions we get asked, because that was some, and then she was a bit more relaxed after that. Okay, I had no choice. My life was at threat, so I had to have the termination, because that was something that was chewing her up. And so basically, so yeah, we were able to guide her Islamically on what Islam would say in that situation.
Okay, excellent. So that's an example of somebody who's experiencing guilt. It seems,
Yes. Yeah.
of a termination that she kind of, I don't want to say initiated. Well, she did initiate it, but it was because of a reason.
Yes,
she
had no choice. Yeah. She had no choice, but she still had those feelings of guilt, even though medically she was told she had to have that termination.
Otherwise, her own life would have been at risk, it seems.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. All right, okay. So listeners who have just joined us, you're listening to Ramadan Radio Leicester on 87.7 FM. You can also listen online at ramadan.fm. If you have any questions relating to the Muslim bereavement support services, please do text them into 077 488 55055. That's 077 488 55055. We've got about 15 minutes left, so yeah, please do get those, send those questions in now so we can answer them in good time. Is it MBSS? Is it like a standalone service, or do you work with other organizations?
We are a standalone service, but we do work with other organizations in the sense that, for example, social workers will get in touch with us and ask us to support families that they are dealing with. So there's, for example, a social worker got in touch with us. There were 2 children that sadly passed away in a drowning accident, and the mother was distraught, and she asked if we could support the mother, which we did. We sometimes get contacted by the police because there's been a homicide, for example, and the family needs emotional support. Palliative care nurses in hospitals that are dealing with families, a family where somebody is on palliative care treatment, and they get in touch with us. Organisations, more mainstream organisations like Cruise, Child Bereavement UK, SANS, these are established mainstream organisations. They sometimes refer to us as well because they can't provide the cultural or the Islamic angle. We have various cancer charities as well getting in touch with us. Young Lives Matters, for example, is another charity that gets in touch with us. Again, Muslim family, they've got a child going through cancer or has passed away from cancer, and they'll get in touch with us. So yes, so there's various different organisations out there that want to provide that extra level of care, and they'll get in touch with us.
Okay. And are you aware of any organisations within Leicester that you're in touch with, or they are aware of your services so they can refer cases to you?
I think the local hospitals will, I'm assuming, because we've reached out to a lot of hospitals to tell them about us. We've sent leaflets to them so that they can display them in their hospitals, in the wards, etc. So I'm hoping that your Leicester community will be aware of us, and your listeners can promote the service as well. If they can do that, that would be amazing, because you don't know who could benefit from it. You don't know who could be really struggling inside, and it's that one person that sees that one poster of ours that you could potentially change their lives, really. And this is what we've done in the past, alhamdulillah, where sisters have been struggling for many, many, many years, didn't know about MBSS, alhamdulillah, just happened to stumble across it, and we've supported them through their grief. And they still remember us years down the line because we helped them at the most difficult time of their lives.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And without breaching confidentiality, can you tell me a couple of examples of where you've provided services and where you've had actually, if you could tell me one where there's been a positive outcome and one where there's been a negative outcome?
I can't think of any that's where there's been a negative outcome. The positive, I think, it's alhamdulillah, from what I'm aware of, it's always been positive. I think if sisters are not benefiting from the service, they just stop the service. Excuse me. Because receiving emotional support is not for everybody, or maybe sometimes it's just not the right time. So we do say to sisters, if you've started the support for us and it's not for you, you can always come back to us if at any time in the future you do feel it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, going to the positive, there was a sister that we supported who sadly lost her husband, early 40s, had a cardiac arrest, and she had 3 young children. And losing a husband also brings in issues with the finances as well. Having to bring up children, having to do the school runs yourself, having to do the car insurance, the mortgage payments, all of this, all the practical side as well. So unfortunately, she also had problems with her in-laws. She had to move home as well, because the husband used to do the school run. It was quite a distance from the school, and she never had to, she never thought she'd be in a situation where she's going to have to do that. And so she had to move closer to the schools, so she had to give up her home. She didn't know anything about the finances. She didn't know if he had a will. She didn't know which bank accounts he's got. She didn't know which, credit cards, if they needed paying off. She didn't know anything, about the financial situation. So it's very important. That's why I do say that it's very important that if you've got any of this sort of things like a will, a bank account, your finances, you need to let somebody know, or you need to write them down somewhere, and then make sure that they are accessible in, God forbid if something happens. So that's one sister that I can think. But alhamdulillah, we were able to support her. We got her through. We referred her on as well to other organisations that could help with, the financial matters as well. We helped her emotionally as well because she was in turmoil. So she felt that because of the practical things that she had to do, i.e., sort out the finances, sort out, having to sell his car, etc., for example, because she couldn't afford to maintain it any longer, she wasn't able to grieve. Her grief was on hold because she had to sort out all the financial things. But then after that got sorted out, then she was able to grieve, and we helped her through that. Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like you provide practical help as well.
To a certain extent, we can. It depends on the nature of it. I mean, so for example, this particular, sometimes we have to signpost. So, for example, this sister didn't know about solicitors, wills, that sort of thing. So we were able to signpost. This particular sister, I was able to help just to encourage her to start driving again. I actually sat in with her the first few times when we were driving from her old place where she lived to the school, because it was quite far. So I just sat in the car with her and just helped her. But that's something we don't get called upon to do very often. But then after that, she moved closer to the school anyway. But just to encourage her to be able to, to do that.
To become more independent, or
Yes,
be
exactly.
able to manage her affairs. Yeah.
Exactly. And just to get that confidence again. Sometimes it's just about getting the confidence again. So yeah.
Okay. And do you know if your organization, or sorry, if MBCOL, so MBCOL is a Muslim Burial Council of Leicestershire, it's a local organization here. Are they in touch with your organization?
I'm hoping so. We're always open to work with organisations. It's about working together for the community, for the betterment of the community, whatever they need. So, for example, we don't deal with the burials. So, if somebody is based in Leicestershire, for example, and they need to sort out the burial arrangements, we would possibly signpost to yourselves and likewise, if there's organizations that are, for example, doing the burials. We have a Muslim undertaker, for example. Whenever he is involved in the burial of a family member or anybody in the community, and he feels that the sister could really benefit from our organization, he signposts them to us. So it's about signposting to other organizations that are better suited to support that individual that needs that help.
Okay. And presumably you kind of actively seek out these kind of organizations so you can inform them of your services?
Yes, we go to various events. We go. The National Burial Council has an annual event. We attend that as well, so that we can let other organisations know about what we do. We go on other media channels as well, for example, and promote MBSS, just because we want the community to benefit from it. It's a shame. It's a shame that there's a charity out there like ourselves that is able to help sisters, and it would be a shame if it's not taken up when it could help.
Okay, so listeners who have just joined us, we're in the last 7 minutes of this program. You're listening to Ramadan Radio Leicester on 87.7 FM, and we're discussing the Muslim Bereavement Support Services with Sofia Bhatti, and she is highlighting the services that their organisation provides to the sisters of the Muslim community, and non-Muslims if necessary, but mainly to the Muslim community, Muslim sisters, on when a death occurs in the family. Okay, and in the last few minutes, how can any of our listeners get in touch with you if they wish to?
Well, we have a website, it's which is www.mbss.org.uk. They can email us info@mbss.org.uk.
Yeah.
They can phone us 0203 468 7333, and we've got the normal Facebook, Twitter, etc. So it's very easy to get a hold of us. The phones are manned, the emails looked at constantly as well, because we realise that if somebody's getting in touch with us, there's a need there. So we want to make sure that we get them the support. It's not only individuals that get in touch with us, it's, as I mentioned before, nurses, doctors that are looking after somebody, and they've realised, that person might have passed away, and they realise that some of the family members are really struggling with grief. So they may get in touch with us. So you can self-refer, i.e. refer yourself, or quite often we have members of the family referring. So for example, a husband might phone in and say, look, my wife is really struggling. And we had the situation the other day, sadly a couple had lost a 4-month-old baby in a car accident. And so the husband got in touch with us and said, look, my wife is really struggling. How can you help? So please just do get in touch with us to get the support.
Okay, yeah. And the website address, mbss.org.uk. That's mbss.org.uk. Sister Sophia, what has MBSS got planned for the future?
We just want the service to grow. We would love to take on at some point more volunteers. We want to bring the waiting list right down as much as possible so that we can get the support as quickly as possible. We want the community to promote MBSS so that our sisters that are in need take up the service, and and we just want to establish it more and more, and we want to go out to more and more organizations out in the community and just to grow the service further.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so yeah, you want to increase the service, and will you be providing more localized services? So I think every kind of area has its own dynamics. So I understand you're based in London and provide a national service, but will you be recruiting volunteers or establishing bases in other cities? Yeah, you also mentioned you've got a base in Glasgow.
We've got a base in Glasgow at the moment, yes. If the need is there, and if there's, so for example, if there's a need in Leicester, and you feel that you may want to create a more localized MBSS, then please do get in touch, and then we'll take it from there, inshallah, and see how we can work together to establish that.
Okay, excellent. So, Sister Sophia, we've got about 3 minutes left. Would you like to summarize what our conversation? So, what does
Sure.
the MBSS do?
Sure. So MBSS is a charity. It provides free, emotional, confidential support to sisters that have lost a loved one. It's a one-to-one service. So you are allocated a befriender that's specific to you. You build up a relationship with her. You open up to her. Each session lasts about 40 minutes. And it's just like talking to a friend in confidence, but a friend that knows how to talk to somebody who's going through grief. That's what we do. And we'll inshallah be able to listen to you. Some days you may not want to talk much, you want us to do all the talking. Some days you want to really offload. Some days you're feeling really angry and you just need to speak to your befriender. That's what we're here for. We are here for you to help you through your journey. Key times like the first Ramadan without your loved one is going to be really hard. Their birthday, your anniversaries, all of these, there's certain times of the year that are more difficult than other times of the year. So that's when you need your befriender the most, I would say sometimes. Following a bereavement, you may feel like, you're on a merry-go-round and you fall off sometimes, but you need to get back onto that merry-go-round of life. And you do learn to live life again. Your life is going to be a new normal life, a different normal life. But moving on with life doesn't mean that you've forgotten your loved one. It doesn't mean that, you've forgotten them and that's it. But moving on means that you learn to live with the grief as part of your life.
Okay.
And yeah.
Sorry, I was going to ask, so apart from the Islamic training that the befrienders receive, what do they receive counseling, training as well? What makes them the experts, or what makes them suitable to be befrienders?
We have external organisations coming in and providing general bereavement training as well. So, that's what we've done in the past, where we've given general training and Islamic specific training as well. They don't get a qualification. We are not counsellors, we are befrienders. So it's a slight difference. But, any sister that's gone through grief and is interested in this, if it's something you're interested in, do get in touch. A lot of our befrienders have gone through a loss of their own, and that's why they're so passionate about helping other sisters that have gone through this.
Okay, so there's sisters who actually personally experience grief, and now, alhamdulillah, they're in a much better state, and they're now able to help other sisters. In the last 25 seconds, how do people get in touch with your service?
Email info@mbss.org.uk, website mbss.org.uk, and you can phone us 0203 468 7333.
Okay, Jazakallah khair, listeners, for listening to Ramadan Radio Leicester.